For those of you on Facebook Live, hello, and I'm really excited here to tell you, I have been working in 4 Fortune 500 companies. Previously started way back when with Motorola, and then I was with Pepsi, Yum Brands, which is the KFC, Pizza, and Taco Bell, for those of you who may not know. And then, of course, Starbucks Corporation was my last corporate role. So for the question of why I started this book, actually it's very interesting. Many years ago, I developed a program called the Global Executive Mindset. And why I did it, because I was sick and tired of seeing many of my colleagues being bypassed for promotion, not because they were not hardworking or smart or had initiative or good ideas, but because they couldn't step up in those crucial times when their senior management was being with them or looking at them. So I decided, since I'm coming out and doing work myself, I was going to design something, because being an Asian in many of the Western companies, if you don't speak up, then you may lose out though. So in order of that, so I created a program. And after I launched the program, somebody invited me to a large HR conference in Singapore. So I participated. I was supposed to be one of the keynotes. And then the person said, do you have a book though? I'm going, yeah, I have a book. Of course, I didn't have the book. So I quickly put together a book, which is 84 pages. This is one of the last ones I've had. It's stapled in the middle, if you can see. You probably can't see, but it's just, I slapped it together and put all my ideas in the book to say I had a book though, right? I printed out 50 copies because I didn't think anybody was going to buy. After my talk that day, all was sold out. And then I decided to actually write the book properly. So of course, the actual book now is 188 pages, and it has many of the things that we're going to talk about today there. So that's where the idea came from. It is very funny how many people in organizations have this little, I call it a conundrum, right? Do I stand out? Do I just sit down, do my work? Am I trying to be too smart if I speak up too much? Do I not speak up? And that becomes the issue. So for us, I try to make it very simple and kind of say, here, 95% of the time, be who you are, but 5% of the times, you have to step up, in the organization. Otherwise, nobody knows you. So that's part of the reason of where the book came from, where it started, and why I'm so passionate about teaching this topic, because it is really important for people to figure out if you want to, stay in a career and be successful in a career.
Thanks, Stephen. That's very interesting. In fact, incidentally, through the Star in Me, we've begun to have multiple networking sessions for women professionals across countries, across different experience ranges. And one key question that comes up for discussion in all these networking events is, how does one draw the line between making oneself visible and being humble? So you don't want to come across as someone who's bragging about what they've done, but at the same time, you want to get recognition. So this 5% zone that you talk about is extremely fascinating. So could you tell us what the 5% zone is and how does one leverage it? Okay, so the 5% zone is very simply, right? There are only two numbers, right? If there's 5, must be 95, right? Out of 100, correct? So 95% of the time, just be who you are though. I can't change you, you can't change yourself, so let's don't pretend, right? Because we don't have to pretend to be somebody else. However, 5% of the time, and we define 5% of the time as being in the presence of people 2 levels above you in an organization. Many people don't get too many opportunities in a year to meet with those people all the time, or higher, right? And I say that's 5% of the time. If you don't at least speak up and get visible in those times, that means you're 100% humble all the time, then you may have a problem though, because in organizations, they're always looking for people who need to speak up, the leaders who can articulate their points of view clearly and share their stories, share their customer stories, share things, right? So we advocate that
5% of the time. So you have to do it in those situations. Now, the irony of it is there are only, we say, 5 situations that people can do this in, though. All right. First one is the one-on-one. That means if you have a one-on-one meeting with somebody higher level up, sometimes they call skip level meetings or whatever it is, you have to stand out, right? So that's your opportunity to shine. If you're bragging all the time, then that's bragging though, right? But if I'm having a one-on-one with a skip level person and I'm talking about my work and proud of sharing what I'm doing, then that's okay though. Then there's a team meeting. So it's either your functional team meeting or your all hands or meeting that you have your large team meetings, your conference calls, which is nowadays practically everything, okay? Your business presentation and the company social. So in those opportunities, you have to step up and show yourself. And here's the thing, Uma, that most people tell me is that, well, Stephen, that's not being very authentic though, because then I'm not being myself, right? But I actually write in the book and show you that you change all the time. So let me give you an example though. Many of you people on the call or you're listening on Facebook Live, I was thinking, when you're in the office, I'm sure you act one particular way, right? But when you go having a meal or some drinks or having a social event with your friends from college or university, you act totally different though. And for those of you who are married, when you go to your mother-in-law's house, do you act the same way in your mother-in-law's house as with your friends? No, right? And then when you go to the game and watch, whether it's a cricket game or football game, whatever game you're watching, and you're supporting your favorite team, you're really excited and some people really get into the game. And when you go to your place of worship, right, you act totally different. Then you're an actor, right? No, you're not an actor. You're playing your role, though. Your role is first a leader and a manager in an organization. Secondly, you're a friend. Third, you're a daughter-in-law or a son-in-law. Fourth, you are a fan. And fifth, you are a follower of some place of worship. So we change our roles all the time. And once people get that, the question you have to ask yourself is this: what role does senior management want to have of you in the organization, though? The quiet, humble person who sits in the corner all the time and doesn't say anything, or the person who stands out? So let me give you an example. Can I share an example of my own, Uma?
Sure,
So
please.
one of the organizations I joined initially, right after the first year, I was at a succession planning meeting. So I wanted to promote my number 2 person, and she was really very good, right? She's technically very strong. She knew all the techniques. Everybody on the team loved her. And most important, the customers all thought she was great. So I brought her name up and said, I think Sally needs to be promoted. And my boss goes, yeah, but I don't think so. I'm going, no. She's really good though. I'm telling you, she does all this stuff for me, blah, blah, blah. I'm afraid that I'm going to lose her. We need to promote you. Yeah, but she's always so quiet in meetings though. So why don't we consider next time? Next time is 12 months away though. So here's what happened though. Sally, the great worker with me and my team in the presence of my boss, is seen to be too quiet because in those meetings, she totally shuts down. So now she missed out on her 5% because who's the one that approves anybody moving up an organization? Not the direct supervisor. It's the supervisor, and those are the times when you need to be at least a little visible, right? And the phrase we use nowadays is, if you're not visible, you are invisible. Let me repeat again. If you are not visible, you are invisible. So your choice though. Why not be visible 5% of the time?
Yeah, that is so true, Stephen. In fact, there is one thing that I keep telling people. You may be the smartest person in a room, but unless you open your mouth and speak, how would anyone know? So, that's one thing that women especially should start doing more of. Speak up in conversations, in meetings.
Yes.
Yeah.
Totally agree. And you don't have to do it all the time. So here's the thing we ask people to think about. Look, in the last 5 times you met with your boss's boss, okay? I'm just using boss's boss as an example. It could be somebody higher up, depending where you are in the organization, right? Did you speak up? Did you say nothing? So if all 5 times you said nothing, then what's my impression of you when your name comes up though? When your name comes up, I'll go, Uma, oh yeah, Uma, she's great. I remember her. Remember that point she asked at the meeting, or remember that great question she asked us? That may be just 1 point and 1 question, but if you don't say anything, then it becomes a problem though. So and for me, it's quite easy if you think about it that way. In my last 5 times, did I actually say something, contribute? And we say there are only 3 things you can do in a meeting. Okay, so here's the good one. If your people are listening, there are only 3 things though. You're making a point, you're asking a question, or you're summarizing. You're making a point, you're asking a question, or summary. You can't do anything else. So before a 5% meeting, you have to decide which one you're going to do though. If you are not familiar with the topic, then maybe you don't want to make a point. You don't want to look silly, right? Nobody wants to look silly. Then you can ask a question. That means you need to have a really good question crafted before you go to the meeting, because if you don't have it, then you feel a little hesitant. You know, well, should I ask? Maybe it's a lousy question. What would other people think? I'm sure none of your members think about that, but that's what most people think, right? Well, what do other people think if I ask this question, all right? And then the best one I like is if you don't ask the question and you miss your opportunity, then you summarize them. And here's how I can teach people to summarize, right? So let's say I'm listening. So now I know I haven't done my first 2 things. I'm right at the end of the meeting. And usually most leaders go, any questions or comments, right? No, everybody goes off in the meeting. No, that's your opportunity when the leader says any question or comment. So now I haven't participated. I haven't asked a question. I'll say, you know, so-and-so, Uma made this great point just now. And Mahua also talked about this particular thing. And I think I'm going to make sure what Uma says, I'm going to tell my team and make sure they do it. Actually, I didn't say anything. I just repeated what Uma and Mahua said though. But you have to know that technique. And that's what we talk about in the book, right? Simple things that let people know how to perform. It's not some leadership model, you know, it's not by values. No, this is in those 5 situations. Do you know what to do? Okay, so it's as simple as that.
I have 2 questions for you, Stephen, taking a segue from what you said. The first one is, in the book you mentioned, especially with respect to the point about summarizing what happened in the meeting, you mentioned that it is very smart to use the same words that the leader has used, right?
Ah, yes. That's my favorite. So sometimes, okay, here's what I tell people, right? If you repeat what the bosses say, they think you're brilliant. Let me repeat again. Not what you said, what they said. Because it shows them that you listen to them. I had this one lady in an internship I was doing for Cigna. And I just did an hour-and-a-half talk. And after the session, out of 200 interns, she the only one who wrote me a letter though. And in this letter, every other line was what I said in my speech in the letter. And I was thinking, man, this girl is great. You know, she's wonderful. No, it's not great because she wrote me the letter. It's great because she reminded me of all the important things that I mentioned in the meeting. So yes, sometimes people are thinking you're just repeating. No, you're telling the leader that you listen to them and know what they thought or he or she thought was important, okay? And it is such a simple thing that most people don't. They always want to tell the leader what they think. Well, yeah, some of the time, right? But it's more important to tell the leader what they think and give it back to them. That's my very strong suggestion, okay? So it's very
That's a great tip, Stephen. Thank you. Another point I wanted to ask you with respect to the 5 situations, you mentioned that the company social or any social event is again an opportunity to make an impression. Could you talk about that a little more?
Yeah, that's right. Remember the 5 situations, right? The one-on-one, the team meeting, the conference call, the business presentation, the company social. The company social actually is the most important. And then some people go, why? It's just a social. We're there just to have some food or maybe a little, drink or something. We're just socializing, right? No, that's where your leaders see if you're comfortable enough to join a group of leaders. Excuse me, join a group of leaders and be able to participate in the conversation and be comfortable. Now, when I was starting out, when the company social, I was hiding in the corner with a friend standing next to them with a drink. And then after 15 minutes, I'm going, this is a boring thing. Why don't you go? I'll follow you. And then we leave the company social though, right? Because I hated small talk though. And that's the problem, right? It's not that we don't like to be there with food and drink. It is the small talk and the small talk with high-level people that now you have to do. But very luckily in the book, we teach you how to do small talk. Though. And we teach you a formula called FORM, F-O-R-M. And that's for you to find out things about people. And a slightly longer one called forming, F-O-R-M-I-N-G, which is in case the leader says, so what are you interested in? You cannot just start to think about it now. That means you go into the social already prepared. So now here's a quick thing, interesting point, right? Then you go, you mean I have to prepare for my socials? It's a social, right? No, social is the best time to actually prepare and get the leaders to know exactly who you are, what you do, and what's important to you. But if, again, just like the meeting, if you don't prepare it, then sometimes it comes off okay, and sometimes not. Though. So I was talking to another very senior lady in a credit card company. And she's an Australian. She speaks 5 languages, though. And she used to work in the embassy, Australian embassy in several of the countries. And she said, Stephen, socials is work. Because I asked her, I said, you guys in the embassy, you seem to have parties every night, though. Why are you having so many parties, though, right? She says, party is work, though. 2 hours, I know whom I'm going to go, what I'm going to talk to them, what goal I'm going to get, and what I'm supposed to come out with. I'm going, what happened to the food and drinks? He says, no, that's the incidental stuff. We know it's work though, right? So if you treat it that way, your social is no more social. It's a chance for you to be in front of your senior leaders in a more relaxed setting. And then, then you don't have to boast, right? You don't have to go to the meeting, Mr. So-and-so, I'm really good. I read a lot of books and let me share this point of view. No.
Mm-hmm.
That's boasting, right?
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. There is an interesting concept that you talk about in the book called the behavioral approach pyramid and
Yes.
the mindsets that are present within the pyramid. Can you talk about that?
So yes, the pyramid has 4 levels, we say, okay? The bottom level is survive. The next level up is cruising, and then contributing, and then winning. So it says, is your intention. What is your intention being in the organization or being with your leader or being with, your boss's boss? Most people go to work, I hope not just to survive, all right? Most people that join your group, the Star and Me, I don't think are there to survive. However, the next level is called cruising is very interesting because where some people get stuck here though. Cruising means this. I give you a task or your goals and your KPIs, what you're supposed to do. Cruisers are the ones that will do exactly what is given to them. They won't do anything more or they won't do anything less. Means you're doing nothing wrong though. But in the eyes of a senior leader, that is not either contributing or wanting to win. So your behavioral approach has to be, I really want to contribute to this group, my team, or my organization, or I really want to win though. In order to do that, your behavior is totally different though, okay? If I just want to cruise, especially if you're in a large organization, it's really easy though, because all I have to do is do my work. I don't do anything more. Why should I or I won't do anything less. So that's the behavioral approach, and it's called your intention. And what is your intention? Is your intention just to survive? Is your intention to cruise? Is your intention to contribute? Or is your intention to win in the organization or help the organization win?
That is great. Thanks for that, Stephen. You also mention a lot of interesting anecdotes and stories in the book. Is there anything you'd like to tell us with regards to this mindset specifically?
Yeah, well, let me just share a little story. I'll read it out for you if you don't mind. Okay, so the book is not only the facts in the book, they're full of stories, and these are real stories. I've disguised the names to protect the innocent, but let me just share the one. This one, the title is "She Was Always a Go-Getter." All right. I had a meeting with a ex-colleague, Jean, who wanted some career advice. After we greeted each other, she said, "You heard Susan made VP, right?" Then, more importantly, she qualified the statement by saying, "Well, she was always a go-getter, wasn't she?" So here she was, right? This lady, she meets me for the first time after a long time, and the first thing she says, "Susan made VP, though." And then she qualified the statement by saying, "Yeah, she was always a go-getter." All right, so let me read the story some more. Susan and Jean joined the organization at the same time as senior managers. Now, 6 years later, one was a director and another was 2 levels higher, a VP. What happened though? Okay. What I noticed already 6 years prior, Susan was already showing the behaviors of a go-getter. All right. She was always wanting to help in projects, participated constructively at meetings, and volunteered to do things within the function that nobody else wanted to do. She very quickly got noticed, even in the early days when we talked about future talent at succession planning meetings. After the meeting, I was thinking to myself, isn't this what most people should be doing? Go-getting, if they want a career in an organization, right? So that was just a simple story illustration, but it kind of asks you about your mindset though. Do you just want to cruise, right? Or do you want to win though? If you want to win or you want to contribute, you may need to do a few more things that other people are not prepared to do. So that's just an illustration.
That's great. So, Stephen, you mentioned the global executive mindset during the early part of our conversation. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So, one of in the early days, when I was putting the program together, and remember I was telling people they were being bypassed for promotion. So, what are some of the behaviors of a person that had to have a global mindset? That means somebody that's working outside of your country and maybe dealing with a lot of international people. So we came up with 7 behaviors that is part of the GEM model and part of the thing that we teach people online as well, right, through you guys. So number one is connect personally. So how do you interact with people and connect personally, right? And we teach them the FORM or FORMING as a formula, okay? How do you articulate your points of view clearly? So in those 5 situations, how do you articulate your points of view? And how do you get to the point? Because most senior leaders are very impatient and don't have a lot of time. The third one is how do you communicate confidently, including the very important section that we talk about asking questions. How do you ask questions, effective questions, and not just ask a question for the sake of asking a question, right? Because one question can make people remember you, and don't waste that opportunity. The fourth one is build trust. The fifth one is provide direct feedback. I'll come back to that a little bit. The sixth one is take ownership. And the seventh is coaching and recognizing them. So very interestingly enough, the 7 behavioral behaviors, the one that gets the most interest is actually providing direct feedback. And why I say this, because we talk about it, you have to provide direct feedback positively though. So we give a concept called positive, neutral, negative. Many people think that if I have something that is not so pleasant to say, or I have bad news, I have to deliver it like it is. So I'm going to tell it straight though. most senior leaders do not want to hear negative statements, negative problems. Yes, you can tell them the problem, but they want to hear the solution. So you need to know how to shift your language from negative to neutral to positive. In fact, Umar, this is such an important concept. I'm writing my next book already entirely on this. And the tentative topic, the title of the book is called Positively Negative.
Oh,
See? So how can you be positively negative? And most people go, no, you cannot do that. And I prove them time and time again, everything that is said or can be said negatively can be reworded neutrally or positively.
Another thing I love about the book, The 5% Zone, Stephen, is how you've included a lot of exercises within every chapter. So it helps people relate to the concepts that you spoke about, and actually make notes and self-reflect on what they can do in order to imbibe some of those. Any advice on how people should use these exercises as they go through the book?
Yeah, so again, the book was written from a very practical standpoint, right? Not only are we giving you tips, but then I want you to think, if I give you and it's modeled around the class, right? So I give you a technique or a tip, you need to show me how you do it, though, or how you're going to use it, or when you're going to use it, or with whom you're going to use it, though. So in a book, unless I leave you some space and ask you a question, okay? So exactly how are you going to create a green X, or with whom are you going to create a green X? A green X is the concept that you do something that people remember you by, okay? So throughout the book, there are places where I give you 3-4 lines for you to think through that concept and think, where am I going to apply this? Because if I don't apply it and I don't use it, then it becomes, I'm reading a book, though, right? It's knowledge-based. So the book is written that way. When we teach the class, whether it's face-to-face or online, it's the same thing. I teach you a concept, show me that you can do it. Most people, in those days, live, if they're live with me, they'll go like this. Yeah, Stephen, I know that already. Okay. Oh, really? Okay, show me though. Then they're stuck though. In their head, they think they know it. But when I'm asked them to say it, so this is the other way I go, right? In fact, I was just doing it the other day. So I asked the person a question and they answered me. So I said, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 is not very good, 10 is excellent. How do you think you answered the question? And they said very proudly, about 7 or 8. I said, if I was a senior leader, you're lucky if I give you 3. Their jaw dropped and I'm going, 3. So I said, you're now a 3. Show me a 7 or 8. And they were stuck. They did not know what to do. Though. And so that's the intention of the exercises, right? To let yourself know if you really know how to apply this and with whom are you going to apply it in the organization.
Mm-hmm. That reminds me of one of the anecdotes you mentioned in the book, Stephen. I think it was when you were running a workshop with a global sort of an audience, and at the end of the workshop, they were all supposed to make a presentation. And there was this one person who was non-English speaking, and he was slightly apprehensive as to how he could even match up to the others. Can you talk about that particular example?
Yeah, in fact, I won't. It's right here in the chapter here. But I'll tell it to you because I know it, right? I lived through the situation. So August was a high potential in one of the companies that I was doing work for at the time in Singapore. We had 20 people from 7 countries, though. India, China, Australia, Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, and Thailand. So those were the 7 countries that organization was looking after. And the leader was asking me to work through his high pros. So it was a year-long project. We met 3 times throughout that year in each different country or city. And the final presentation or final meeting, they had to do a presentation to their RVP or their regional vice president. And Adi, because of his language capability, he was not that he wasn't able to speak English, but he wasn't as articulate as everybody else, okay? So it was his second language and he wasn't as good. So most of the meetings he was keeping quiet. And right at the end, the third session, I taught the 5% zone or the global executive mindset philosophies and ideas. And at the end of that session, he came to me and says, "Pa Stephen, I want to beat everybody." I'm going, "Whoa, what happened, Adi?" He says, so he got so angry. He says, "I've been quiet this whole year, and tomorrow is the presentation to the RVP. I want to show her that I'm really good," because he's been keeping quiet the whole time. So I said, "I'll tell you what, Adi, you tell me how you're going to be different from everybody else. Okay, I'm going to go to each country and go through their presentation. I'm going to come back to you and ask you, what are you going to do very differently from everybody else for her to remember you?" So I go around to everybody and then I come back to him and I says, "Okay, Adi, what do you think you're going to do that's different?" He said, "Stephen, everybody's going to start from the beginning and go to the end of the presentation. Though I'm going to start from the end and go to the beginning." I'm going, "What kind of idea is that?" He said, no, you don't understand. The RVP is a finance person and all my financials are at the end of the deck. So I'm going to start with my financials and then go backwards. I'm going, okay. So let's redo this, because going from the start to the end and the end to the start, totally different. We had to rearrange some slides to get the thing to flow. And I said this, Adi. I said, "Adi, your English is not very good. Maximum 2 sentences for every slide. Don't say anything more because you can make it worse." So you went in. So we drew straws. The first country that went was Australia, the powerhouse. Second country went was India, another powerhouse. Third country was China. The first 3, we drew straws, right? So the first 3 powerhouses went. The fourth country, Adi had to go up from Indonesia. He stood up and here was his first line. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to start from my last slide." You could hear the whole room go, "Damn," right? Because he's so different from everybody else. And he followed me exactly though. 2 lines, next slide, 2 lines, 2 lines, 2 lines. And when he hit the title slide, he said, "This is why all of you need to do this in your country though." Everybody stood up and clapped for him though. He was the only one that they clapped for because he was the worst, but he tried the hardest, and his own colleagues recognized that though.
That is so nice to hear. Thanks for sharing that. In your book, Stephen, you keep talking about how one needs to understand their organizational culture and values. And you mention these lines, like while you're in Rome, do as the Romans do. And you use a similar line which says the Romans like to see more Romans in their organization. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so let me just kind of give the story for those who don't have the book, right? We all learn in school or, your history lessons, all roads lead to Rome, and in Rome, do as the Romans do. We added a third line. Outside of Rome, Romans are looking for other Romans though, all right? So let me explain. If you're carrying a shield and it's not a Roman shield, you may be carrying a spear, but it's not a Roman spear though. You may be wearing one of those helmets, but it's not a Roman helmet. What it tells me is you can fight, but I will never make you a leader of my legion in my far-flung empire because you do not look like me though, right? A leader of a particular army looks like the army. They have to have the uniform first. Now, every leader and a Roman general or colonel or whomever has their own behavior and personality, but they look like a Roman. You can be the best horseback, bow and arrow, Kublai Khan's best killer in the thing. Yes, very good. Please join me at the back of my phalanx to support me, but you will never be the leader, even though you're the best one who shoots everybody, right? So the concept is Firstly, you have to understand, what does your organization, Rome is the metaphor for your HQ or your organization. What are they looking for though? What behavior are they? If I was a Motorola and you didn't talk Six Sigma, you're dead though, right? Forget about it. Don't talk about anything else. Six Sigma, measurement, process control though, right? Are you a black belt, not a black belt? Okay, you're not important though, right? They're going, right? But that's important for their organization. Pepsi, if your ideas weren't big, large, and out of this world, nobody's listening to you though. So crazier your idea, the better you are though. Okay, so now you go, but if you're not comfortable with that in Pepsi, you have a problem though. Yum Brands, if you are not talking about the customer in the beginning of the meeting, you're not important to us though. And of course, at Starbucks, if you didn't have a passion for coffee, forget it though. Every meeting starts with coffee tasting, okay? So now you go, okay, how can you be somebody, right, not one of these behaviors, i.e. looking like Rome, work in that company though? You can't say, well, I'm not really interested in customers. I'm interested in process here at Yum Brand. People are going, no. Customers is important. So you have to show the behaviors that Rome, i.e. corporate headquarters or whatever the organization you're with, espouses to fit in and to look like it. The one additional fact, Umar, I told, so if you watch any of the history, or the movies about, Roman Empire and Julius Caesar and stuff, all the senators in Rome, in the Senate, wear robes. And the color of the robe is white though. If you came in with the best blue silk outfit and walked into the Senate in Rome, do you fit in? No, you have the best outfit, but you're not wearing white cotton though. Means you don't fit in. Okay, so we're not even going to listen to you because you're standing out for the wrong reason. Okay, so that's the whole concept of Rome and why you need to look like a Roman. I asked one of a lady from a global bank, very senior lady. I said, so after I told this story, here's the question I asked her, and I'm now going to ask the people who are listening on this event, right? Do you know what Rome wants? And do you look like a Roman to Rome though? Let me repeat that again for all those who are listening, right? Do you know what Rome wants? And do you look like a Roman to Rome though? If you can't even ask the first one, how are you going to do the second one though, right? And it's surprising how many people who are asked to raise their hands or type in a chat box or something and go, do you know what Rome wants? At least half of them say they don't know. Okay, so that's the first problem. Okay, so anyway, that's the concept of Uma.
Yeah, in fact, I totally agree. So like you, incidentally, you took the Motorola Six Sigma example. I started my career with GE, and even General Electric was focused on Six Sigma. So they basically told us, unless you were a black belt, don't dream about entering leadership level. So
exactly.
I became a black belt eventually. So
now you do know Motorola taught GE the Six Sigma concept, right? But that's the point, right? GE, when Jack Welch was there, was Six Sigma though. Every facet, every business unit was Six Sigma. And to your point, if you were not a black belt, you did it. So in Starbucks, the same thing though. Mm-hmm. You go to Starbucks, there's a green apron, right? If you notice, some of the baristas have black aprons though. Uh-huh. Black apron means you're a coffee master though. So within the Starbucks system, it's like having a black belt, right? If you have the black apron, means you know a lot about coffee though. So that's a way of showing people, hey, so now the pressure is on you, right? You can't be in the company and wear green all the time. That means you're not interested in coffee. So there's a system there that kind of tells us whether you are Roman or you're not a Roman though, right?
Oh, very interesting. Good. So, Stephen, can you tell us about the key philosophies that one should keep in mind if they're aspiring to get to the next level in their organizations?
Yeah, so it's very simple. I'll talk about four that we talk about in the book, right? The first one we've been talking about, in fact, we started off with it, which was 95-5. You have to understand that 95% of the time you can be who you are, but the 5% times you are in with people more senior, 2 levels above an organization, you have to step it up and be slightly different. You cannot communicate the same way as you do with your team, as you do with your boss's boss or higher, right? You have less time, you got to be straight to the point. So that's the first one. And understand that the behavior change is not you not being authentic, it is you changing your role, right? Your role at 95 is very different than the role people want to see you at 5%, okay? The next one is a concept we talk about called good to great. Do you just want to be a good employee in your organization or a good entrepreneur or a good consultant, or do you want to be a great one? The difference between good and great is maybe very small, but it's a decision. Because here's what I see in many corporations, right? Well, Stephen, I don't need any training. I'm pretty good at presentations already. Yeah, I know you're good, but you're only as good as the person who comes before you or the person who comes after you, right? So take, for example, right? Uma, you go first as the presentation, you're great. If I'm not as good as you, am I going to be great? No, I'm not though. And if somebody else, Mahua comes after us and she's even better than me and you, who people going to remember? They're going to remember Mahua, right? So the concept of good and great is very important because it requires a decision. Do you want to be good or do you want to be great? Okay. And those who want to be great do things a little bit differently than those who just want to remain good. Okay. Then the next concept is called the rules of the game. It's a little bit like the Roman thing, but we call it the rules of the game. Do you understand the rules of the game within the organization? Or more specifically, sometimes for your boss or your boss's boss. Give you an example. Some bosses, when they have meetings, they like to talk, they want you to listen though. Other bosses, they want you to talk and then everybody to talk, and then they will say something though. So now you go 2 totally different styles, right? If you're a person who keeps quiet in a meeting, the first boss, you have no problem though, because he or she is talking and you are listening though. If you go to the other meeting and now they're expecting you to talk and you're keeping quiet, you have a problem though. Vice versa though. If you're the person that likes to participate in meetings and then you're in the first meeting and every 3 lines you're putting your hand up and says, excuse me, sir, I have a question for you. You're irritating though. So you have to realize the rules of the game because in all organizations, the rules are slightly different. And here's the most interesting part though. The unwritten rules are more important than the written rules though. The written rules, everybody knows, but it's the unwritten rules that is the one that you have to figure out in an organization. And it sometimes changes from leaders to leader. And then the last concept we talk about is creating green X's. So creating green X is creating something memorable that you have done that when your name comes up, people remember exactly what you did. So if your name comes up and you go, Umar, immediately the mind works this way. I go back to the 5 situations that I may have met you. Did I meet you in a one-on-one? Were you in a team meeting? Were you on a conference call? Did I see you at a presentation or did I meet you at the company social? If you don't even register on this in my memory, then who are you though, right? I may have heard about you, but I haven't experienced you. So now I go, Uma, and then she go, wasn't she the one that did that great one-on-one with me? Yes, I remember her. Wasn't she the one that did a great presentation? Wasn't she the one that she told us that story at the company social? Wow, she must be great. If I go, Uma, and then you go, Uma who? You're dead, right? So if you don't even remember your name, you're dead. But if I remember your name, you have to have created an impression on me in what we call a green X, okay? A green X is something memorable that you have done to make sure that people remember you in the organization though. And then again, straight away, we ask them to do a little exercise, right? What green X's have you done if I went to your boss's boss and asked, mention your name, though, what would they remember about you? Though? And most people go, oh, shoots, boss's boss, I'm not quite sure, though. Okay. So those are some of the philosophies we talk about, at least in the book. So.
Thanks, Stephen. Now, here's a question that might be on everyone's mind, considering the current situation globally and the fact that we may end up working from home in the foreseeable future. Do you think these concepts still apply, and do you have any additional advice for people to focus on during these times?
Yeah, it's actually the concept is totally the same. All right. You may not have the interaction, but guess what? You have one-on-ones virtually, you have team meetings virtually, you present virtually. In fact, people now have company socials virtually also, right? Meals and lunches and all kinds of stuff. So the situation is slightly different, but it's the same altogether. However, the thing now you have to pay attention to is what we call virtual presence, right? How do you look? So this is what we call visual difference. And then we call it voice differentiation. That means how do you come across from a voice standpoint, and then your virtual messaging. So it's 3 V's kind of thing we talk about. So give you an example. Half the meetings I attend online, you know, the only thing I see of the person is this, right? Their head is like this. And I only see this. I said, what kind of impression are you creating if only thing I see is your head, or your eyes or your head? Or worse still, some people's face are right in the camera and some people are way back there. They don't realize how they come across virtually though. Now, if you realize not, this is called a half shot. Head is a full shot. And if you're too far back, nobody does that. So if you watch TV, okay, just go watch TV, tell anybody. You watch the news though. Everybody is half shot in the camera and looking straight into the camera eyes though. Nobody's looking up at the camera, nobody's looking down. Most people are looking down at the camera because their laptop's on the table. And if I can see your ceiling, means you're looking down. Now, I see the fan, I see the light. People don't care. No, it's very important because that's your presence though, right? And if you have a 5% meeting, it's very important. Okay, so let me give you another one, visual background. My face is only this much of the entire screen. What do people see? They see the entire background though. So my background is set up this way to reinforce what I'm trying to say though. I have my book there, I have the star in me there. It's set up that way, right? Now, I'm not suggesting you need to do that, but you have to consider what is in your background. My suggestion is very simple. Have a blank wall. If you have a virtual screen, put something, make it just as plain as possible. However, those are the little things that, you know, people don't realize. Then virtual messaging is the same thing. Are you taking too long to answer? Do you get to the point? You know, the same things we talked about, right? Can you connect? Can you communicate confidently? Can you articulate your point of view? How do I gain trust when I'm not meeting with people? Can I say things positively, neutrally, negative? The same thing. I'm going to deliver a message, but I may be delivering it negatively, right? And then do I step up? So I can still volunteer for things and still be noticed in a virtual situation. The thing is, you got to think about it a little more and more carefully because you may not have the interaction in the office like we used to have, right? So this is not going away, correct? It's probably going to be here, and even if it's 50% of the time going forward, you have to look good 50% of the time. So do you look like a Roman in front of the camera though? Okay.
Yeah, very significant points, the 3 V's. I think all of us will remember that, Stephen. Before I hand it over for Q&A, one last aspect. Would you want to talk about the Winning in the Work World series that you've done, and we're partnering with you to channel it to more people across the globe? Can you talk about those modules that you've developed?
Yeah, so the Winning in the Work World series is exactly a distillation of many of the concepts that I just spoke about, and it of course from the book, right? There are 10 modules. They're all micro-learning videos, which are 7 to 9 minutes long. And at the end, there's a scenario for you to practice. That sounds familiar, right? Like the lines in the book, right? Yeah. So why? Because you think you know it. Yeah, okay, we'll give you a scenario and see if you can do it, though. Okay, see how comfortable you are. They cover the same concepts, including the 7 gem skills that we talk about. So the introduction is the philosophies around 95.5, the 5% zone, how are you supposed to behave? And then it is back to the, can you connect personally, articulate your points of view clearly, communicate confidently, build trust, provide direct feedback, take ownership, coaching and recognizing, and then you have a summary module right at the end. So they're done from the premise of an organization standpoint. So it is, if you are in a large organization or you're in a corporate world, that's the focus that we have. And it's, I think people should check it out, because these are the skills that your senior leaders are looking for when they consider who's ready for the next level, right? Mm-hmm. Remember, your work is done, right? I assume you're knowledgeable, you have great attitude, and you're competent in your work that you do. However, who's behaving like the next level? And that's some of the skills that we teach in those modules. So,
thanks, Stephen. Now we'll open it up for Q&A. If any of you have any questions, you can unmute yourself and either ask yourselves or type it in the chat window, and I can pose those questions to Stephen. Go ahead. So we have a question from Vidisha. She says, I'd love to know your take on how to create a balance between when in Rome, be a Roman versus stand out or be unique.
Stand out, but unique. Okay, so unless your Roman is very different than being to stand out. Okay, so is the question that Rome wants you to be quiet and then you need to stand out, or is the question different? But let me give you and see if that person types in the clarification. However, so let's take, for example, if Rome is a place that, you know, everything is very professional, everyone has a very demeanor, everybody, the senior leader speaks and then nobody else speaks. Okay, which is fine. That's the meeting. But the way to stand out is then not during the meeting, it is after the meeting, though. I've seen many times in some of our banking clients, right? In the meeting, everything is formal. They go through the agenda, the leader speaks, at the end, boom, they go out, everybody's in the corner. Sir, you know, I have a little situation. Okay, great job. But in the meeting, nothing happens. So you have to figure out, you know, standing out is, remember, right? The simplest way to say this is, if I mention your name, what do they remember that you've done for me lately, though? I don't know. Did you help me on a project? Did you volunteer for something? Did you speak up? Or were you the one quiet and keeping quiet? So Rome has their own whatever you need to do. You have to figure out how to stand out within that Roman context, okay? So it's very important. So standing out in one company may be slightly different than standing out in another company. So.
Thanks, Stephen. Vidisha, hope that answered your, yeah, she says that did answer her question. Anyone else? Do you have any questions that you'd either like to type in the chat window or unmute yourselves and ask? So while people come up with their questions, Stephen, I wanted to ask you if, you know, you think that a particular, that professionals at a particular experience range would benefit from these concepts, or should one do it early on in their career? What is your take on that?
You know, here I can share with you what usually people say after they go through the training, or, you know, when we teach the concept, they all say this: I wish I had this 10 years ago. Why? Because they probably were too negative, step on somebody's toes, said something they shouldn't, didn't participate enough, didn't volunteer, they missed the opportunity to ask a question. I'm too humble. My work will speak for itself. You will die in an organization if you had that philosophy, though. Okay? Doesn't mean you won't progress in your career. You will just take a much longer time. And the people who I've seen, right? Remember, when we first wrote the book, we interviewed 100 executives, VPs, and above, though. They all, in all companies, are looking for a very similar thing. The most recent one is one of our leaders in a bank that asked. He says, Stephen, you know what? I want everybody in my group to go through your training, though. I don't need everybody to step up. If 20% of them step up, I already gain 5 headcount, though. I don't have to add people in because people are just stepping up to do a little bit more than they do. Otherwise, everybody's cruising, right? Means they're doing exactly what they've been asked to do, which, again, nothing is wrong. However, if you want to stand out, you might need to volunteer for something. So I'll give you one more story. I was doing some work in Bangalore, and I was going back from the Bangalore airport, from Bangalore, the office to the airport. I was sitting with a gentleman in the class, and he was flying back to Chennai. And then he said, you know, Stephen, I've been in the company for 10 years. Though. I haven't really stood out or done anything. Though. Your question when you asked me if you went to my boss's boss and asked about me, I said, I don't think he knows my name. I said, okay, you got your task, right? You better volunteer for something though. 1 week later, he wrote me an email. Stephen, I just volunteered for this project ABC. I can't remember now, right? It is the most liberating thing in my life. Oh my God, what happened to this guy though? But see, he's been in the company for 10 years though, Uma. 10 years. He has not volunteered for anything. He's done his job, which is great. However, if you want people to remember you, you might want to be visible some of the times though. Okay? Otherwise you may get lost in the shuffle though.
Right. While we wait for more questions, okay, there's a question here. Vidisha says you mentioned about your upcoming book, but just to get a peek, how to raise a negative issue or present a contrasting opinion to do something in a way that doesn't hinder our image in front of the seniors. So she's asking.
Yeah. So firstly, there's a language is how you position things, right? So let me give you an example. Let's say we're in a team meeting now. We have 2 hours to solve the customer's problem, right? So if I'm talking to the team, I'm going, hey guys, come on. We got problems here. We got this problem, that problem, that problem. You know, how are we going to solve it? Blah, blah, blah. Everybody's discussing, putting ideas together. Now I'm going to have to present the problems to my boss. When I go to my boss, it'll be, hey boss, we got a few issues. Now the problems suddenly became issues already, right? Because you are trying to put it down. You're not trying to say, boss, we got all these problems. Okay, if boss, you got all these problems, means you're a complainer though. So are you complaining? Or are you trying to solve the issue? So now the boss says, oh, wow, we have a few issues. Let's talk it to my boss. So you went from a 2-hour meeting. The meeting with your supervisor is half an hour. Now we're meeting with the supervisor. You maybe have 15 minutes. Though. And you know what? Out of those 15 minutes, they usually talk for 5 minutes. So you actually have 10 minutes only, right? Now you went from problem to issue to, you know, Sally, we have a few things that if we tweak, I think we can get a better customer engagement. What happened to the problems? Now with a few tweaks, we can get better customer engagement. But that's a totally positive way of saying we have problems with our customers. Okay, I give you another one. I can ask a question. Okay, most people, this is where they get it wrong totally. Okay, question. Our customers are currently wanting a lot of new services and we are not doing any of them. So what do we do? Okay, does that sound, it is a question, but it sounds like a complaining question though. How do I change that to sound it more interesting or more positive and neutral? You know, our customers are expecting A, B, C, and D. How do we get ahead of this trend? Huh? Now I'm getting ahead. I'm not talking about we're not doing it, so what do we do? I'm talking about getting ahead of the trend, even though we're not doing it. I'm not sounding like I'm complaining. Okay, so you can see why it's very specific language and why I get really into this, because people shoot themselves in the foot all the time because of this though. And if there's time later, I can even tell you my own personal story about how I started with all this early on, but see if there's any other question, right? So.
Sure. Alex, do you want to ask this question yourself? So Alex has asked a question. How can you leverage a coaching versus a managing culture in an organization?
How do you manage a
How do you leverage a coaching versus a managing culture in an organization?
Okay, a coaching versus a managing culture. Okay, so I'm assuming you are now in a coaching culture and you want to leverage that versus something that's top-down managing type culture, right? So
yeah, probably.
Anyway, in our 7th facet, we talk about this, and in very simple concept we tell people, right? If you're going to coach and recognize or do a coaching technique within your organization, then you use these 2 lines, only 2 lines only, okay? What I appreciate about you, okay? And what you could do to be even more effective. Now, notice the language of the 2nd line is also about positive, neutral, negative. It's more positive though. So if I was going to coach or mentor Umar, I would say, Umar, what I appreciate about you are your brilliant questions that you ask during the session. What you could do to be even more effective is give me more time to speak. Okay, so that's another way, right? I don't want to say, Umar, right? Your question, you are asking too few questions and not giving me enough time. That's what I should have said. That's what my intention was, but you don't say that though, right? Yes, you can say that to your colleague, but you don't say that to a senior leader. So, and so the coaching thing is just 2 questions. What I appreciate about you first, and what you could do to be even more effective, not what you're lousy at, all right? That's negative on you, and so what you could do to be even more effective, okay?
Okay. Any further questions from anyone?
Yes, I had a question.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Hi. Uma mentioned, and even you mentioned, thank you so much. This has been a wonderful session. The point which I really appreciate is whenever we are, like Uma said, right, the women don't really come up and voice out. It's very important at this era that you kind of make your presence felt. And you rightly mentioned the 5% zone, which actually I think many people try to showcase that, oh, you're trying to show off that you're pretty confident, huh? And you want to make presence felt in the meeting, but how do we get across some people who have this aversion, or they think that, oh, you have the attitude which makes you feel that, I'm not the right person, you're saying that I have attitude, but I'm the person who definitely has a voice out. I feel it's a proper question, so I've asked. And especially the second layer, right, the bosses, you make your presence felt only by voicing out. Could it be a hello? Could it be a question? It's not taking a credit for I'm comfortable talking to my seniors and I have no fear of public speaking. But the point here is that we're trying to make those people who are not comfortable come out of that zone.
Yep. So this is, thank you for the question. So this is I won't say a big problem. However, this is an issue that comes up all the time though. And it's rooted around, yeah, but what would other people think if I speak up or if I do something? So again, it's back to a little bit about the culture and the rules of the game in your organization, right? Some organizations is okay, some is not. So there are only, remember back to my comment around, there are only 3 things you can do in a meeting to stand out or to say something. You either make a point of view, you articulate a point of view, you ask a question, or you summarize them. So it is in the way that you ask that usually that makes you either, you're trying to be too smart, right? Or if you're speaking too much in the organization, you have 2 problems, right? People who say nothing and the people who talk too much. Either end is the problem as well. So for those situations, we suggest you either ask a question or maybe summarize at the end. Because if you if you try and articulate your point of view, then you may be seen as trying to be too smart, right? Ask a perfectly correct question. One of the things that we talk about actually in asking a question is the two things though. Are you asking a question or are you being questioning? That's the first layer, all right? And then what is your intention of the question? So just give you an example. Usually people ask the question for the person in front to answer the question, right? There's actually a second intention. I ask the question. I hope the person throws the question back to me. The third one is actually the best one. I like my favorite. I ask the question to make somebody in the room look good. So I'll give you an example of that. So this way people don't feel so bad, right? If you ask the question for yourself, then you may be looking like you're trying to steal the limelight. So let me go back to my Umar example again. So let's say Umar is in charge of Project X. So I put up my hand that says, you know, so-and-so, Project X has been very successful. Uma is smiling because she's in charge of Product X, but she's not asking the question. I'm asking the question. How can we take the learnings from Project X and spread it throughout our entire organization? Now Uma is going to faint over, on the table because she's now so happy. And if whomever the leader says, yes, I heard great things about Project X, and I think we should do that. Now, what have I just done? I have just made Uma look good, and I've created a green X with somebody by me asking a question. So I'm not asking for myself. I'm asking it to make somebody else look good. I participated and I got somebody's attention, all right? So this is some of the things we are teaching because sometimes it's not as obvious as it seems to many people. And of course, right at the end, you know, we always talk about there are three different types of questions, right? A personal question, company question, or a customer or a supplier question. There are different categories. So even in questions, there's so many layers that many of you are not even thinking about. That's, for me, it's so easy to stand out because if everybody's asking a normal question, I just have to switch the question and immediately my question is a little bit, it stands out versus everybody else. Now, I think we have still a little bit of time, right, Uma? You got a few more minutes?
Yeah, we can go on, yeah.
So the issue which you brought up is really what we call a little voice issue. So in the book, we mentioned this, right? So it is not that we don't want to participate in what other people think, it's what you say to yourself. And I always say, give the example that we have two little voices, right? Little voice one, which is what you say to yourself. Hey, Stephen said, ask the question, so you better ask the question. Then you have a little voice two in your head that goes, yeah, but what would other people say? Then you go, oh yes. Then you won't ask the question though, right? Or your little voice one comes in and says, hey, Stephen said you can summarize. You better summarize. You've heard everybody talk already. Then your little voice two said, yeah, but what would the boss say if your summary is no good? Oh yeah. So we call little voice one and little voice two. Your little voice two is the one that kills you all the time because it is telling you about what other people is going to say and why you shouldn't do it. You will always find a reason why you shouldn't do it because your little voice two is an expert of all the reasons why you shouldn't do it in an organization. So we actually teach a technique. If you look in the book, 4 different things that you can do to cover your little voice two for 0.5 of a second to be brave enough to put your hand up. But if you don't put your hand up, it's not when you put your hand up is the problem. It's when your hand is going up, that's the problem. It's like, you're pulling yourself down because you're afraid of something that's going to blow up, which usually doesn't, though. Okay?
Okay.
On the same point, Stephen, I had a good point. I was attending one of the training sessions. So I, being a facilitator myself, there were seniors who are actually facilitating. So we had a 2-day workshop, and on day 1, like you said, the type 1, where you are asking questions so that it benefits the class, or maybe let's say it's a very valid question. I didn't want to keep my mouth shut because I thought even though I learn or not, let the class learn. So I did that. But the second day morning, Stephen, the facilitator, right from the way he wished me good morning, he comes up with a nice poke and he says,
Yeah.
you know what, you've been very tough in the class, right? So rather to say that, keep your mouth shut.
Yeah.
And in the, the first, by the first half of the second day training, he says, I guess you know it all, right? I said, no, I don't know it all, but the way I want everybody to learn is not by having a monologue, but by making the class interactive, which I think, I couldn't tell him because he was my senior on the face, but
Yes.
I was
Yes.
giving him, I was giving him immediately back that you improve the quality of your session. So was I kind of wrong, Stephen? I mean, is this kind of approach workable? I mean, do you think it's good in a company?
Yeah, it's workable. So now it goes to another layer of giving feedback, which is your tone, right? So how do you come across saying that? I can say, I'm really trying to help everybody in the group. Okay, no, I'm really trying to help the people in the group, and I'm using it as an excuse to protect what I just did. So sometimes it's the tone. I'm not saying you had a wrong tone, but the tone now becomes very important as well. So that's why the whole notion of positive, neutral, negative is very important. One of the exercises we do is we give a negative statement and we ask people to change it to either neutral or positive. And when you read the statement, people go, yeah, how to change that, right? But when you break it up and get people to do it, they suddenly realize that everything negatively can be done neutrally or positively. And in your case, it comes down to the tone and what the rules of the game are in the organization. So sometimes, okay, I'll give you an example. I had a boss previously whose first response to anything is no. Okay, you bring up a good idea, he'll say no, right? And then his reasoning, he told me though, he says, Stephen, if these people, I'm going to see who is really behind the idea, because if they come back to me again the second time means they really are behind the idea. And I will still tell them no. Though. And I'm going, really, Peter? Yep, no. And if they come back the third time, then I know they're really behind the idea. Now I'll listen to them. So, but if you don't even know that as part of the rules of the game, you hear the first no, you may not go back and say, oh, boss says no already. But what the rules of the game? So the rules of the game and how the organization, sometimes it's just the person itself, how they want things to be conducted is very, very different. And this is why in one of the other philosophies that we didn't have time to cover is something we call pay attention, right? You have to pay attention in those 5% situations a lot more than a normal meeting. And the way that we do this is very simple to get the idea across to people. If I tell you, let's have a discussion between you and your partner. So let's say my partner is Uma and we say, hey, Bob said, have a discussion. So let's talk about the topic. Yeah, we talk about it and then we're all happy, right? But if Bob said, or the facilitator said, I want you to talk to your partner and you tell me what your partner said is the most important thing. Then I'll go back, hey, Uma, can you say one more time again? Because in case he calls me later. So the level of paying attention in a 5% meeting is tremendous. So for me, the 5% paying attention is nothing like the normal meetings you are. You have to really pay attention because right at the end, you have to summarize. And here is the biggest trick that I'll tell you, okay? Let's say you're in a one-on-one with a boss's boss. Or let's say even in a meeting like you mentioned just now, okay? And right at the end, for most leaders, they say this. Any questions or comments though? And most people go, no, thank you, no, lovely meeting, okay? Great, I know it's a lovely meeting. However, you have not summarized the essence of the meeting. If you can do a summary, and especially if you mention either what the boss says or other people say in 1 or 2 lines, then people go, then you go, Sally, 2 key things I'm taking away from this meeting. 1, your points on the 5% zone were excellent. 2, the rules of the game is something that I will teach my team when I go back and tell them. Thank you. Boom. Immediately people go, oh, shoot, right? Because not only am I summarizing, the key fact there is you're going to do something with one of the two things you've mentioned. And that's just some of the things. So now, there are just so many other things to talk about, but unfortunately, I think we're running out of time or whatever. I'll let Uma ask any other questions that other people may have. Thank you so much for asking the question, Vandana, right?
Yeah. Hey, thanks everyone. Stephen, I think we have to close now. To everyone on the chat, I have put in a link to the premium content section where we can access Stephen's video modules. There is in fact a discount code for the Star and Me members, so do use that code. And Stephen, thank you so much for making it so interesting and insightful. I'm glad we started the Author Spotlight series with you, so thanks so much.
Well, thank you very much, Umar, and thank you for the Star and Me to allow us to give me this opportunity to share some of the wisdoms in the 5% zone.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Stephen.
Thank you, Ma.
Thank
Thanks
you.
all.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.